we do not enslave people in chains anymore in this country. But what we do is we enslave them in debt. We enslave them in student debt, mortgages, credit cards, and what have you.
A new silver company for investors, with Keith Neumeyer agreeing to become a major shareholder. Luke Norman, co-founder of Gold Standard Ventures, is the new chairman, and the company has acquired 3 former First Majestic silver properties. To learn more about this must-own silver stock, go to futuremoneytrends.com/silver1. That's futuremoneytrends.com/silver1.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in to crushthestreet.com. I'm here. We are back on the line, but we have a new guest today. His name is Barry James Dyke, and he's a new guest. He's an ardent student of Austrian economics, and we love that here over at Crush the Street. He defends the market economy, private property, and sound money. He celebrates freedom and productive power of capitalism and views government intervention as socially and economically destructive. He's a president and founder of Castle Asset Management, LLC, which is a registered investment advisor, and he's got over 3-decade career in the financial sector, and we're honored to be interviewing him today. Barry Dyke, thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me on your show, Ken. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, sir. Well, I know you're a best-selling author and you're working on a book that addresses the inherent problems of investing in the stock market, how deregulation and the central banking system have created the casino age, which you call, which shifts additional risk onto consumers. So in regards to the new president and the current financial mess, what comes to your mind when I say sound money?
It's business as usual with Mr. Trump. I actually, Kenneth, have a new radio show myself. It's on every Friday. It's on a Portsmouth Community Radio in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Just for your listeners out there, it streams across the globe at www.wscafm.org. It's a Portsmouth Community Radio. But as far as Trump being elected, whatever today, it's going to be pretty much business as usual. And let me just put it this way: I did not vote for Hillary, but I think, unfortunately, we're going to see a lot more of the same. What do I mean by that? You look at who he's promoted to Secretary of Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin, who who actually made a fortune out, and you're based in California, who made a fortune taking over the bankrupt IndyMac Bank, getting the taxpayer to back it up, and then rebranding it, calling it One West Bank. They in turn flipped that to CIT Financial, which in turn was also bailed out by the U.S. government. And Steve Mnuchin, who's actually also a Hollywood producer, a former Goldman Sachs partner, and so was his father, and I guess his brother was as well. So this guy is going to be the new Treasury Secretary. So what I'm saying is, don't expect to see any really Wall Street. How can I put it? There's going to be a lot of Wall Street influence in the new administration. Another guy by the name of Wilbur Ross. He's going to be the Commerce Secretary. He's a private equity financier. Trump has already put together his executive powwow team, Kenneth, and the head guy there is going to be Steve Schwarzman, who's president of BlackRock private equity firm, which is it is the largest private equity firm in the world, and gets most of their limited partner money from state pensions like CalPERS and CalSTRS. So it goes on and on and on. So what I'm saying is a lot of the stuff people are looking for change, but you also have to be really. What I want people to do, really more so than anything, is invest in themselves first of all, because Wall Street is kind of a rigged game.
Well, I tend to agree with you, and you're right. I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, but I do like, certain aspects of Trump. I like that he's an outsider. The latest news is that he's rejecting the $4 billion upgrade to the Air Force One plane here, and that's kind of a cool little thing that he's saying no to, what he's basically calling a rape to the American taxpayer. And, going back to sound money here, we've been 45 years away from the last time we've seen a major change to the monetary system. Of course, that was back 45 years ago when Nixon closed the gold window. Do you see a shift taking place here going forward into 2017 that is going to put a big change in what we now know as the fiat currency system of today?
Well, as you know, Kenneth, okay, so you're familiar with how the government creates money out of thin air, and then the banks, you deposit in the banks, and they leverage the heck out of it, and if they collapse, well, then the taxpayer bails them out. And that's the problem with not having a sound money system. This is why I think really from a macroeconomic level, that's still the same corrupt game, if you will. But I think really from your listeners' point of view, I think really developing hard money concepts on their own, investing in themselves, saving versus investing, saving first versus investing, and so on. Because who knows what's going to happen, Kenneth? But it's crazy times, and I'm not trying to. I think a sound money concept would be great, but but the thing is that America is not the only people who are doing this stuff. We're just kind of like the cleanest shirt and dirty laundry. The Bank of Japan, the European Center. Europe's a mess. Look at the Italian banks; they're falling apart.
Right.
I mean, British banks, RBS. I mean, they're still under state control. So I mean. So I don't want to get paranoid, but I think really looking at sound money and investing in yourself first. And by the way, for your listeners out there, for anyone who wants to read further about some of my concepts, go to my website barrymajamesdyke.com. Again, that's www.barrymajamesdyke.com, and you'll see that that find out more about me and so on.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to have that link in the description area for everyone. And I love what you said about hard money concepts, listeners looking for their own hard money concepts. And essentially, we know for people who follow the economy that the fiat currency, fiat money, isn't a true store of value. And where we can store that value, that's where we're looking for. I mean, and a lot of us are believers in precious metals and, holding things like agriculture or land or farming, things like that. Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on this and where people should be protecting themselves?
Well, again, I think those are all good investments. I mean, hard assets, people will always need to, have homes and, in agriculture. I mean, you're in California. I'm in New England. There's ice in the ground out here. Okay, it's cold. But definitely hard assets. It's just a store of value. I mean, gold has been around for 5,000-6,000 years. It's not going to go away. Hard assets, they're a store of value. I mean, personally, you still have to buy hard assets with paper currency. So obviously, you want to be liquid, and one of the things which I recommend to people is using life insurance, and because this is where all the banks put their money, and even the Federal Reserve itself. And just essentially try to insulate yourself as much as you possibly can from Wall Street speculation, because the name of the game, and it has been, and I'm going to have one of the top economists on my show in about 2 weeks' time, a guy by the name of John Kay. It's always about the use and abuse of other people's money, and so the more people can keep their money away from Wall Street speculation, the better off they'll be. So things like gold, hard assets, agriculture, timber, that type of thing is all good, okay? But conversely, you also have to operate in the real world so you want to look at, you're protecting your family with your life insurances and disability insurance, health insurance, and so forth. But, and staying out of debt.
Sure. Well, I mean, talking about things that are not so much controlled by, Wall Street and speculation and corruption, many are turning to Bitcoin. Do you happen to like Bitcoin, or, have you done much investing or looking into
Kenneth, I'll kind of pass on that one because it's my understanding that, Bitcoin is just an algorithm which, it can't be changed or whatever. I don't really know enough about that. I just, I kind of, when things get involved digitally, I know they can be manipulated. So I'll pass on that one. I just haven't done enough research to give people a fair shake on that.
That's totally fair. Well, going back to the dollar here, and the dollar has actually gotten stronger over the last couple of years. And, last I checked, the dollar index was over 100. And you know what? The problem with that is emerging markets, companies in these emerging markets. And I know there's a statistic out there that companies that are in these emerging markets have borrowed $9 trillion US, and who largely derive their earnings from their local currencies. And that's a problem when they got to pay back their debt in US dollars, which is getting more expensive on them. So any indication, in your opinion, on what this economic impact will have around the world and maybe even here in the U.S.?
Gee whiz, Kenneth, we're in uncharted waters. We haven't been in this situation before, so only God knows. And for your listeners out there, I always tell people really one of the best things you can develop is not just physical assets, but really more so your physical, your spiritual assets, your faith and your God or whatever, and your friendships and so forth. Because if this thing does melts down, okay, that's going to be the most important thing. Mm-hmm. But the whole idea of we're in essentially a tremendously leveraged finance economy, and so. Everything is so fragile right now. It's just, but people don't know. So who knows? I mean, look at Italy. Look at Italy. I mean, I've lived in Italy. It's a wonderful country. Okay, but I mean, it looks. I think 20% of the loans on their books and the major banks in Italy are essentially they're insolvent. And most people do not understand. And you probably being an Austrian, you understand the fractional reserve system. Am I correct, Kenneth?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, do you know how much some of these banks are leveraged? Deutsche Bank, how much they're leveraged? They were saying, like 70 trillion, larger than the whole... for every dollar they have in deposit, I mean, Deutsche Bank, I mean, they're for every dollar they have in customer equity or in their customer deposits, they're lending out 60, 70 times. It's insane. And this is what happened when Lehman Brothers and Merrill Lynch and Bear Stearns and Morgan Stanley and all these other clowns collapsed in 2008 because they're very over-leveraged. So my point is that Italy is one of the biggest economies in the world, and they're having problems. So who knows what's going to happen? But I do see kind of a populist uprising in Italy as well. But and then again, in Austria, they didn't vote the same way. So who knows what's going to happen if some of these people default. Mm-hmm. Something like Italy, who knows?
Yeah. And this is something that I kind of think about and contemplate a lot. And when a company does bad, people sell it or it collapses, it goes bankrupt and then there's other options. People go elsewhere and, the company only controls their circle of influence. But when you're talking about something as large as, governments here, something that's around the world, people don't have necessarily something to opt out of or another option. So even when everything does come crumbling down, they're still within the system and nothing to opt out of. And to a large degree, that's why it continues to sustain itself, because if people had other options, they would just opt out. And and so this closed circuit sort of economy we're dealing with is just kind of locked people in. And even with that, though, we're seeing it bust, and the seams are bursting. And even with someone like Donald Trump getting voted in, we're seeing the establishment crumble, and Brexit happening, and the things that are happening in Italy and Europe. And what I think and what I hope happens is, if it does come crumbling down, people are invested in the right things that will retain their purchasing power and keep people afloat here. So, any thoughts? Any additional thoughts?
Yeah, again, if people visited my site, barrymajamesdyke.com, I mean, it's not just, you look over abroad, you're in the state of California, Kenneth, okay, but if you look at the
lion's den,
government, if you look at the pension liabilities and it's something like CalPERS, it's unsustainable. I mean, I think there's a guy by the name of out of Illinois, has called OpenTheBooks.com, and they disclose that over 21,000 people in California make over $100,000 a year in pension benefits from the state of California. I mean, I think it's something like, it costs them like $3.1 billion a year, or and they're only like, and the thing is, they have a target investment rate which they have to hit, Kenneth, to keep the pension fund buoyant. And last year, CalPERS, I think, made about 0.06% on their money when they're supposed to get 7%, and then the year before, I think they only got 4%. So, right you don't even have to go outside the country, but you have these major public union problems and pension problems, which are enormous. And so you see not just in California, but you see this problem in the Dallas and police and fire, and Illinois is the Chernobyl of this stuff. So my point is if they want to read or educate themselves more, to look into my research, but to wake up. So the idea of sound money, investing yourself, and having store of value, fixed assets such as gold, silver, life insurance, annuities, things of that nature, high value stocks, make all the more sense when you really look what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's all this talk about California seceding from the union because of how differently California thinks from the rest of the country. But oh my God, if California did that and they took with them its share of the debt burden, and it would just be an absolute disaster. There's a lot of arrogance here in the state of how quote unquote strong the economy is, but there's so many unsustainable practices and non-productive economics that are going on here that would absolutely implode. And I think it's hilarious that they're pushing for this. And again, it's just this mindset of ignorance that people just don't have the foresight to really see the degeneration and the instant gratification at the expense of future prosperity that we're eating away at here. So let's move on. There's lots of talk about the medical arena here with the new president. Donald Trump wants to shake up Obamacare, although he's already pulling back on some of the things. He's saying he likes the pre-existing condition. He likes the fact that kids can stay on their parents' plans until they're 26 years old. But hey, hopefully some things get better with him and they can shake it up somewhat. But premiums have been rapidly increasing. Deductibles are increasing. And medical expenditures is, at the top of the list, the line items in terms of the federal budget expenditures. And in all the research you've done and the people you've spoken with, how do you see the medical industry impacting the economy down the road here?
Well, I don't know. I have a friend of mine, Jeff Halpstein Harris out of North Carolina. He's one of the experts. I had it on my own radio show. The medical insurance essentially consumes about 19% of the gross domestic national product. I know I'm in New Hampshire now. I know I'm paying $700 a month for a $5,000 premium, and I have a HSA and all that stuff, and it's still crazy. The again, I think we always have to have a spiritual revolution first because of the embedded interest with lobbyists and the medical industry and the AMA and what have you. It's crazy. And then so again, one of the other things which I recommend people do is stay. This is kind of silly, but staying in shape. Work out. Watch what you eat organic. To be moderate in your drinking. Don't do drugs. All these things which we really know are intuitively good for us because, because if this thing collapses, who knows? I don't know. I don't want to be paranoid. Only God knows what's going to happen. But anyone who's been to the hospital now, it's ridiculous. I mean, I I've had a recent medical procedure, and I don't know. I was there for 2 hours in the morning, and it was $4,000 or $5,000. So it's just it's crazy.
I couldn't agree with you more, and especially when it comes to working on yourself, investing in yourself, and staying in shape, because let's face it, when you're sick, even with the smallest cold and you're in bed, you don't feel good. And when you don't feel good, you're not thinking, it's hard to think and prepare for tomorrow, to be in that right frame of mind, to be optimistic about the future when you're not in great shape right now. And that's one of the things that I motivate myself on a daily basis. Hey, eat good, take care of my body, and be strong for tomorrow, and have hope for tomorrow. And that's exactly what you're saying, Barry. When it comes to actionable advice for people here in 2016, what do you have for people in conclusion here? What is your general advice for people, in addition to what you've already said? And tell people a little more about who you are and where they can find you, and what they'll find when they visit your work.
Well, first of all, invest in yourself, and that means your spiritual, your physical, and your mental, life. I call it the 5 F's. My faith is the most important thing in my life. I'll tell that to anybody. I've said on national radio, and so I have no problem with that. Family, obviously, family. Without family, why do it? You got to have friends. No one does this stuff alone. I can't do this stuff, what I do on my own. So you got to really focus on friends. Fitness, as I mentioned to you, you got to be physically fit to maintain all this stuff. And then finances, and finances are key, which is the last stuff. So you want to really be. You want to take control of your finances, because what has happened, Kenneth, is we do not enslave people in chains anymore in this country. But what we do is we enslave them in debt. We enslave them in student debt, mortgages, credit cards, and what have you. And this is, as you know, as an Austrian economist, this is because essentially the predatory powers of the banks that be. Create money out of thin air and collect interest on it, and if you don't pay it back, they can seize your assets. So, really to have a appreciation of saving versus investing and staying out of debt, because this is how the we have the student loan. I think it was it's roughly about 1.3 trillion right now. It's unsustainable, but it's just so. So those, the 5 F's, your faith, stick with your family, your friends. You got to have friends. You got to be physically fit for fitness, and the last one's finances. So those are kind of my Barry's 5 things, which I tell people to focus in on.
Barry James Dyke, everyone. I couldn't agree with you more there, sir. I really appreciate you taking the time and inspiring me today and educating me on all these different things. So I encourage everyone to visit Barry's work, and we'll have his information in the description area if you'd like to visit his website, his radio show, and his Castle Asset Management. Barry, thanks. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
No, just good luck to you in getting out there, and again, have people educate themselves, because the media, this is why this is great that you're getting out there, because the traditional media is really in bed with Wall Street and the banks and everyone else. So really, have people spend time in reading and using the internet. The internet is a wonderful equalizing power. I mean, that's how I became a best-selling author, because of the internet. I've sold, my books in 21 countries literally after being, overcoming tremendous odds with the traditional media. So again, educate yourself, and also always have faith. There's always hope. And also be grateful.
Be grateful.
I guess maybe that's one of the things. Be grateful. I mean, at the end of the day, the United States is still a wonderful place to live in. I mean, we have so much to be thankful for, and I guess maybe that's enough from me. But again, if people want to, they can find out more about me by visiting www.barrymajamesdyke.com.
Yes, sir. All right, sir. Well, thanks again for taking the time, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Kenneth.